This is a throwback attack. This is a throwback attack. This is Jack's throwback attack.
Hello there, my name's Jack and I am what you would call a nostalgia nerd. I love looking back at the awesome TV shows that I grew up watching during the 90s and noughties. This is a bit of a new thing that I'm going to do occasionally, where I look back at a particular show that I really liked. A bit of a retrospective review. The very first one that I'm going to do, unsurprisingly, hence the sweatshirt, is Art Attack, which actually celebrates its 30th anniversary this year in 2020. So get your pencils and paintbrushes at the ready. This was Art Attack.
This is an art attack? This is an art attack. This is Art Attack! Art Attack was the long-running popular art show on CITV, hosted by Neil Buchanan, who over 19 series demonstrated many vibrant, brilliant and elaborate works of art, often with bits of rubbish and things you'd find around the house. Oh, and of course, lots of PVA glue as well. It was a show which was not only a favourite of mine, but also a whole generation of children that were inspired to be creative. This video is going to take a look back at why this show was so great, and first off, let's take a look at how the show began. We have to start off with Neil himself, who was born and raised in Aintree in Liverpool. Neil's original ambition was to be a rock star. In the late 1970s, he was the guitarist for rock band Marseille, who won the first UK Battle of the Bands contest in 1977 and performed alongside the likes of Judas Priest and Whitesnake. Unfortunately, the rock star gig was short-lived as Marseille's record label went bankrupt, leaving all the members of the band without work and out of pocket. It was during job hunting in the early 80s that Neil saw an advert advertising for presenters for a new Saturday morning children's programme. Neil's application and audition for the show impressed the TV execs enough to give him a gig on the Saturday morning show number 73, where he would often demonstrate how to create art and show off his drawing skills.
A secret admirer. Secret admirer.
You know that his secret admirer sent me all those cartoons, you know, one of me and one of... Should we open it up?
Let's load.
Oh, it's a secret admirer.
Percy!
Pleased to meet you. Who are you?
Neil.
Oh, right.
No, I'm Neil.
Oh, you're Neil.
You got some cartoons?
Yes, I have. Cheaper for me to bring them down myself than to post them.
Have a look. Oh, who's that?
Barbara Woodhouse.
Yeah, what does she say? What does she say?
Walkies.
Walkies. Walk on. Sit.
Barbara Woodshed.
Barbara Woodshed. Very good. Little dog. Who's that?
You just turn it over, overlap it about ½ an inch. Now, can you just hold that for? And then just bung some tape across the joint like that. And there you have it, 18 inches of fairly straight track. Right, let's give it a road test.
Yeah.
Make sure it's straight there. Is it straight? Yeah. Right, big test. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, roll on!
Neil continued on number 73 for a number of years before moving on to the succeeding Saturday morning show on ITV, Motormouth.
Island next door, eh? Now with me I've got the director of the film, Clive Reese. I've got the two young stars here, Helen Pierce and Max Rennie.
No, it looks fantastic.
Right, that's it for today.
It was during his time on Motormouth that Neil decided he wanted to present his own show, based on a lifelong love of drawing and art. Neil devised the idea of an art show alongside his friend and TV producer Tim Edmonds, who worked for TVS Television, the then ITV region for the south east of England that produced number 73 and Motormouth. This was back in the days of when ITV was separated into local regions, all with different names, but that's a long story. A pilot was filmed in 1989 in a disused swimming baths of all places. The pilot was never broadcast, but it surfaced online some years later.
Believe it or not, this is my studio.
Now, if you're anything like me, you must have had that urge to be creative. You know, to create something that's fun to do, and when you've done it, it looks brilliant. Well, art isn't just about drawing and painting. It's about using anything you like, in any way you like, to create visual excitement. Something that gives your eyeballs a shot. That's an art attack. This is an art attack. This is Art Attack! Art Attack! Art Attack! Art Attack!
The pilot must have impressed ITV, as the show was greenlit to be made shortly after. Of course, with some tweaks to the format and a much better set. The very first episode of Art Attack was broadcast on June the 15th, 1990.
Problem. I keep getting the urge to do this. Woo! Now I call it plop art. Not only does it look good, it is brilliant to do. All you need is an egg.
And that, in a nutshell, is a brief rundown of how the show began. Neil and Tim created the show for TVS Television, and they were credited under the collective title of The Media Merchants, and the show was recorded at TVS's studios in Maidstone in Kent. In 1992, TVS lost its franchise on ITV, so Neil and Tim used the Media Merchants name and formed their own production company and bought the format off TVS to continue making it. The TVS studios were bought by another company and became an independent production facility and was named the Family Channel Studios, which have now since been renamed to the Maidstone Studios. And Art Attack continued to be recorded there. But they needed an ITV franchise holder to put the show on the network, so Scottish Television did exactly that, despite being almost 500 miles away. The reason for this was because the franchise holder that replaced TVS, called Meridian, didn't want to inherit any of TVS's programmes. In every episode of Art Attack, Neil, over the course of an episode, would demonstrate between 3 to 4 works of art, which you could recreate at home. Or at least that was the idea, but my household rarely ever had PVA glue or sticky back plastic, but never mind. Every episode also featured at least one project you could make out of household rubbish.
Now, tribesmen carve their totem poles out of hollowed out tree trunks. Now we're going to carve our totem poles out of hollowed out loo roll tubes. To make a photo easel, you'll need some of these things, lolly sticks. 3 in a row, and I win. Come and have a look at this. Now, to make 3D noughts and crosses, you need a small-sized newspaper.
And you could also be guaranteed that every now and again, Neil would do something involving creating a big mess with lots of paint. My mother would dread these moments, as I would often recreate these and cover the living room in poster paint. And one of the other notable parts of the show was the big art attacks, where Neil would create a giant picture out of almost anything. And let's not forget the Christmas specials, which featured even bigger art attacks, such as the skating snowman in Austria and Neil lighting up the New York skyline.
Are we ready? Here we go! We're going. We're going. Look at that. Look at that. There they go. Oh, okay, here we go. Here we go. Right, this is it.
Go on, Joe. Go on, Joe. It's gonna work.
Go on, Joe! Yeah!
And as well, who could forget the many catchphrases?
Come and have a look at this.
The white school glue in the squidgy bottles, mix it 2 parts glue, 1 part water, pushing it into all those nooks and crannies. Just some wispy lines and the brown paint and permanent marker, wispy lines and curls.
Try it yourself. Try it yourself. Try it yourself. Try it yourself.
One of the other parts of the show you may remember is the head, the talking, laughing stone bust that could never get his artwork right. But did you know he didn't originally look like that, nor was he originally intended to be a puppet?
There you are then. Using lots of bright fabric paints, you can jazz up any old shirt or your specs. For example, boo!
The head again. I've done one of those as well. I went to a lot of trouble. I got the black paper, packet of chalk pastels, and I did my own name. Look, the head. I left school when I was 6.
It wasn't until the 3rd series that the head that we know and remember came in and remained with the show almost until the end.
Each bit dry before I paint the next bit. I'll try that next time. Because it's bound to be better than this. Oh!
If you've ever wondered who was the man behind the head, it was puppeteer Francis Wright, who has previously been a guest on my podcast. And here's another thing you may not know. Art Attack wasn't only made for and broadcast in the UK. The show became so successful that in the late 90s, a deal was reached where the media merchants would produce international versions of the show for the Disney Channel. The international shows were filmed at the same studios and used the same props as the British one.
On va transformer ceci en cela. Ça, c'est le château de tes rêves. Et voilà comment le fabriquer.
Hallo und herzlich willkommen bei Art Attack, eurer großen Kunst- und Bastelshow. Wie immer könnt ihr natürlich alles, was ich euch heute zeige, ganz leicht auch selber machen. Also los geht's mit Art Attack.
Mojamos el cepillo en pintura, poquito, muy bien. Y ahora a esparcir la pintura. Con mucho cuidado no manchemos, ¿eh? Muy bien, perfetto. Ora?
Questo è un ottimo modo per creare un quadro con un motivo batik. Allora, la prima cosa da fare è fare un disegno su un foglio di carta bianco con una matita. Più è semplice, meglio è. Poi prendiamo una candela o un pastello a cera bianco. Prendiamo un altro foglio, lo sovrapponiamo al primo.
Tu já alguma vez viste isto? São letras em relevo e foram postas aqui de maneira a destacarem-se do papel. Pois é. Têm um ar muito profissional, mas também são muito caras. Por isso vamos arranjar uma forma de fazê-las mais barato. Para isso só precisas de uma folha de papel colorido.
Cuando hayas terminado de pintar el diseño básico, puedes agregar detalles con marcador. Esta es una etiqueta Art Attack, pero le puedes poner tu nombre o incluso puedes copiar las letras de un tubo de pintura de verdad para que parezca más real.
Bem-vindos ao Art Attack da Disney. Aqui a gente prova que você não precisa ser artista para poder fazer arte. Então. みんな元気? アートがちょっと苦手な君もアートが楽しめちゃう。それが Art Attack.
And seeing as I've mentioned the studio and props, I think that was one of the most awesome things about this show. The set made out of giant art props scattered everywhere. It went through some design changes over the years, but it always looked colourful and bold. And this is how Neil got the inspiration for the set.
I'll tell you a story about the set.
Go on then.
Believe it or not, this set was designed on my lounge floor.
You're joking.
No, because I threw all my art materials down there, and me and my producer, we were sitting there and going, what can we do for the set? And then suddenly I had an idea, and I lay down, and I said to him, get down here and have a look at this. He said, what for? I said, just look at that. And he looked on the floor, and I said, what can you see? He said, a load of art material. I said, pretend I was that big. And he said, oh yeah, Honey, I Shrunk the Artist. You remember that film, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids?
Yeah.
And that's how the set came about.
And that was the various components that made Art Attack. What's really impressive about Art Attack is the show was so successful that not only did it spawn lots of merchandise and lots of VHS releases, but in 2000 the format was sold to Britt Aldcroft for a whopping £14 million. The media merchant's name was still retained, and Neil stayed on as a director, as well as business partners Tim Edmonds and Peter Urie, and the show continued to be made. The Brit Aldcroft Company later became Ghislaine, and then the format was sold to Hit Entertainment, who produced the show for the last few series. In 2007, Neil finally decided to hang up his red sweatshirt, and the show came to an end after 19 series. But the show didn't stop there. The success of the international editions led to Disney buying the format completely in 2010 and producing their own version of the show, including a remake for the UK as well. But it's just not the same without Neil, is it?
So to finish things off, it's time for my thoughts on why I thought Art Attack was such a fantastic show. Well, first off, it's a show that really stood out, I think. It wasn't the first time that an art show for children had been done. I mean, for instance, Tony Hart did it during the 70s and 80s with the likes of Vision On, Take Heart, Heartbeat and all of those. But Art Attack was just something very different. Neil took it up another level. It was bold, it was brash, it was very much the rock and roll art show, I think. It was also a show that I really loved. It had a lasting impression on me, it inspired me to be creative, and in fact it inspired a whole generation to be creative, not just in this country, but around the world as well. But here's the thing, did I ever recreate any of the paper mache models shown on the show? Well, I did, but only once, and it was something called a garbage gobbler, which was basically a monster-shaped bin. I love the big art attacks as well. My particular favourites were the ones where he would draw using salt or lentils or something like that in a black studio. In fact, my most favourite big art attack is a picture of a Chinese dragon done entirely out of red lentils. I will admit that as a kid I used to build my own giant art props and pretend I was hosting the show, and even now in my adult years I go to Comic Con sometimes and cosplay as Neil in Art Attack mode, wearing this jumper as well as carrying around a paper mache pencil that I built, and it always goes down a storm and people love it and love sharing their memories of the show with me.
And let's not forget, the Art Attack name was used as inspiration for the name of my blog and YouTube channel.
I also have to admit that I grew up watching a number of shows that Neil presented, and he was my childhood hero, and in fact he's one of the people I'd love to have on my podcast. This hasn't happened yet, but who knows what may happen in the future. What's also cool as well is not long after Art Attack finished, Neil went back to his first love of music and reformed his band Marseille for a short time as well. And to this day, Neil is still very much making art. Check out his website. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this nostalgic look back. I hope to do more of these in the future. And I'll see you next time. Ta-ra!